Thank you very much, Chair.
Thanks very much. Okay, good afternoon and welcome to this meeting of South Cambridgeshire District Council's Scrutiny and Overview Committee. My name is Councillor Graham Cone and I am the chair of this committee. Along the top table with me are, to my right, Councillor Stephen Drew, my vice chair, and to my left, Ian Senior, who is the Scrutiny and Governance Advisor. I will introduce other attendees when I invite them to speak. This meeting is being live streamed. By your presence here in the chamber and via video conference, you are deemed to have consented to being filmed and to the use of images and sound recordings for the webcast and archive recordings. When addressing the committee, speakers should not disclose any personal information of any individual, as this might infringe the rights of that individual and breach the Data Protection Act. I can confirm that the committee is quorate, there being at least 4 Scrutiny and Overview Committee members here in the chamber. At any time, if a member leaves the chamber, would they please make sure that it is known to Ian and myself so we can get this recorded. And that applies also to people joining us online as well. So I'll hand over to Ian for any apologies.
Okay, we've had apologies from Councillors Sally Ann Hart, Tom Bygott and Judith Rippeth, and Councillor Paul Bearpark is here as substitute for Councillor Hart.
Okay, so we'll move on to declarations of interest. Have any members got any declarations of interest they want to declare? Yeah, Councillor Khan.
I'm on planning committee, and the first description of the North Stowe involves work which will become before planning committee. In order to protect my interest, I will withdraw for the first presentation, so that I don't get involved in, so that I can make decisions on planning committee when the time comes up.
Thank you for that. Peter Fain.
Similar declaration, Chair, but I have no intention.
Sorry, microphone. Microphone.
Yeah.
A similar declaration, Chair, but I had no intention of withdrawing. I just don't intend to participate in the debate on that item, if there is any.
Lovely. Councillor Bill Handley.
I'm on the planning committee. Can I withdraw? No, Chair. Seriously, I am on the planning committee, but I won't be sitting in on that particular planning meeting because for obvious reasons.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Lehman.
Thank you, Chair. I'm a substitute for the planning committee. I'm not a regular attendee of the planning committee, but I should declare that here. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Anna Bradnam.
Thank you, Chair. I'm also a substitute, but I had advised the monitoring officer that if I was asked to substitute at that planning committee meeting, I wouldn't speak on that item.
Thank you for that. Anybody else? No. Okay. So we'll move on now to minutes of the previous meeting, pages 7 to 12. Have any councillors got any amendments or any comments on the minutes? Councillor Anna Bradnam.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask, on the excellent report from the Young People in Task and Finish group, I just wanted to check on the recommendations, which are at the bottom of page 10 and then proceeding on to page 11. The first and the third bullets suggest instructing officers. And I just wondered, is that appropriate? That may be an appropriate terminology, but I wasn't sure whether we might prefer to ask officers to do something rather than instruct them. I don't know. Is that a reasonable question?
I think it was changed to asked a cabinet.
Yeah, so, and the advice I'm getting from Ian is that it actually was changed at the cabinet meeting to ask from instruct. So
So this is changed.
it was
So what we've
changed
got
at
in
the
front of us
cabinet
has
meeting.
since been changed.
Yes,
Okay.
agreed.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I think at that point that's okay, and it sort of takes into account what you've said, Councillor Bradman.
Thank you.
Councillor Khan.
I wasn't at the last meeting, so I will be abstaining from any vote on
Okay.
this.
Anybody else? Anything on the minutes? Okay. Just scroll back. Okay, in that case, I will deem them sort of a fair and accurate interpretation of what happened at the last minute. So, public questions. Item 4, I don't think we have any public questions at all. So item 5 is the Northstowe Community Facilities update. We'll start with anyone that's got any questions on that item. Councillor Leeming.
Thank you, Chair. I have three questions to do with this paper. The first one is just some background information, please. So I thought it might be helpful to put it in context if we knew how many people currently live in Northstowe and how many houses are occupied at the moment. I wondered whether that could be added to this paper to put things in context, because some of the Section 106 trigger points are dependent on the number of occupied new dwellings, so I think it would be very good to understand exactly where the Northstowe development is at the moment. I don't know whether anyone can update on that, please.
Councillor Bill Handley.
Yes, Chair, I can give some latest figures. Just bear with me while I get them up. We have currently, I think it's about 1,400, just over 1,400 people now, of which I think 35 are in phase 2. So phase 2 is fairly, is very early stages really. So I'm doing that from memory, but I'm sure that's right. Yes, oh, here we are. Phase 1, 1,318, phase 2, 35. And that was at 20th of September.
Thank you, Councillor Handley. And does that mean that there's more than 500 dwellings occupied now?
Yes, that's true.
Thank you. Great, that was my first question. My second question related to the location of this civic hub. So there's a point in here which it's point 39 on page 18. And it says that the exact location of the building has not yet been agreed with Homes England. There's a steering group, and I wondered whether that would be consulted with the local residents as well, and what degree of uncertainty is there about the location of this building? Is it there's a plot but we don't know where the building is going to sit in the plot, or is it that we don't know where it's going to be on site?
My understanding is we don't know exactly where it's going to sit in the plot. We need the red line from Homes England, and this actually very quickly in this meeting underlines the fact that we are working in partnership. We are in partnership with Homes England and other partners, often interdependent. You know, we're waiting for them to tell us where it's going to be before we can make real progress.
Thank you, Councillor Handley. And will the local community be consulted as part of that? Will the local community be consulted as part of this location agreement in the end?
The community is being consulted with continuously. Actually, I was hoping that I might be able to sort of give a very brief rundown of what's going on when it comes to engagement with the local community, because it's, you know, we really have forged very good communications with them. With your permission, Chair, can I just very quickly, there are three very key groups within Northstowe, which I'm going to refer to, I would think, from time to time when I'm answering questions. Would you allow me just 2 minutes just to explain what they are?
If it goes to
it's
answering
relevant.
the question, then I'm very happy for
It's
you
relevant
to do
because
that.
it's to do with communication,
Yeah.
which is what Councillor Leaming's asked
Please
about.
go ahead.
Okay. There are three main groups which we're working with. The first one is the Town Council, which well, actually been central to the success of the delivery of what we have delivered, which is the temporary community building and very soon the Western Park Pavilion. The chair of the group, Paul Littlemore, provides a very strong link between council officers and the Northstowe community. And I'd like to take the opportunity to thank them for the amount of engagement and help and advice that they've given us. The town council have been fantastic. The second one I would mention is a delivery group. Now, the Northstowe Delivery Group is a small group. It oversees and assists us to deliver the council's programme. It has representatives from the town council. Paul Littlemore is one of them. We have our own ward members, Natalie Warren-Green and Tom Bygott, County Councillor Feruz Thompson, and South Cam staff led by Anne Ainsworth, Peter Campbell, Claire Gibbons, and a number of SCDC officers who come and go to give us the benefit of their experience and knowledge on certain issues. The role of the delivery group is the delivery of the community facilities that we are responsible for, and includes a transition of assets, because that's what's going to happen in the fullness of time from the council to the town council or another group as agreed. Homes England is a big important partner, and they have already started to attend the development group meetings, and I foresee that they will play an even greater part. Finally, the community forum, and this is where we are communicating at our best, really, with the community. It's a very well attended, very popular forum. It gives the opportunity for Northstowe residents to speak with all the stakeholders, not just South Cam staff, but Homes England, Anglian Water, County Council, whatever. They have the opportunity to hear from them and to quiz them about developments within their village or their town. Those three groups are key, Chair.
Do you want to come back, Councillor Lehman?
That's a really clear answer. Thank you, Councillor Handley. My third question relates to point 8 on page 14, which is about the original section 106 agreement, which allowed the developers to pass responsibility for building the community buildings onto the district council. And I wondered whether we had learnt any lessons from this experience and whether it's something that we would repeat again or not.
Yeah, that S106 agreement was signed off under the previous administration several years ago. It won't happen again because it has caused this administration and the council a great deal of trouble. I can say that with every confidence. It won't be happening again.
Thank you, Councillor Handley.
Thank you. Councillor Anna Bradman?
Bit difficult because you're the only one.
Councillor Hobray?
Thank you, Chair. So I had a question which is a bit of a follow-up from Councillor Leaming's question about the point 43 on page 19, which talks about the land transfer to South Cams for the construction of the pavilion being triggered by 500 occupied new dwellings in phase 2. So I think Councillor Handley just said that there are 35. Oh, sorry.
Yes, there are only 35. But the Western Park Pavilion is going to be open probably within, well, by the end of the month, I would think, if not very soon after that.
So I wondered
So
if...
we're ahead of time.
Oh, okay. So we're well ahead of the 500 a trigger in this case. Thank you. I was going to ask, yes, how that lined
Sorry
up.
if there was a misunderstanding there, Councillor Lim.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Anna Bradnam?
In fact, my question was also about the trigger at 500, and that's been answered, so thank you very much.
Any other speakers? This item? Councillor Stephen Drew?
Sorry. Okay. Excellent, thank you. Issue. I just wanted to, as we're kind of at the end of our questions, I just wanted to consider kind of forward learning in relation to this. One of the things that's been brought up within the committee a few times, and has kind of been mentioned by Councillor Leeming in relation to this as well, is the issues related to S106 agreements, and obviously one of the things that's been talked about with Northstowe is the work that the District Council has had to do to overcome issues related to previous agreements. And it's great that extra funding has been put in, and it was good recently to see Councillor Handley and others from Cabinet opening up the community centre, and all really good in that regard. But I know that a number of members, both on the council and in the Scrutiny Overview Committee, have talked about concerns about ensuring that with our growing number of new towns, so obviously we have the West Cambourne development, the Water Beach development, obviously continuing Northstowe, and then the Bourne Airfield development. And I just wondered if Councillor Handley or one of the officers could perhaps give us a sense of what specific points of learning they think have come out of the work that's been done for Northstowe, and a sense of how we can be confident that the delivery of the Water Beach New Town and the delivery in Bourne Airfield will clearly have learnt from mistakes that have been made in the past.
So I'll come to Councillor Bill Handley first, and then I'll come over to Anne Ainsworth.
Yeah, you know, we are now in a very good position. We've just delivered what the hot off the press, the interim community building is going to be called the Cabin by local people. So we have the cabin, which is incredibly well used already. The pavilion, myself and one or two of my cabinet colleagues went to the pavilion last week. It's a truly fantastic facility. You know, 6 rugby changing rooms, for example, and things like that. It is a very impressive building, and you have to commend the officer team that's delivered it, because it's been a mammoth task, and they've done a fantastic job. And this is, when you consider the things that have happened in the last few years, notwithstanding COVID, which has clearly delayed things. It certainly caused challenges. We had to change our plans. Didn't just affect us, of course, it affected our partners, who very often were unable to build through lockdown and so on. So things were badly delayed. We know that, which is why I'm really proud of what we've done in the last 12 months to bring these 2 important facilities forward for the people of Northstowe. I understand the Northstowe residents' frustration, but I think you'll find now, if you go to speak to people, that they are actually really optimistic for the future with the new facilities that are coming online now.
Councillor Stephen Drew?
Yes, fine. You were going to go to Anne.
Sorry, yeah. Anne.
Thank you. Sorry, it was just on the previous point, just a point of clarification. So under section 40 of the report, that was about the phase 2 sports pavilion. So we are just about, as Councillor Handley has said, to open the phase 1 sports pavilion. But the phase 2 sports pavilion will be coming online later, and that relates to the number of houses in the phase 2 development rather than the phase 1 development, which is where the current pavilion is being built. Thank you.
No, that's fine. Great. Thank you very much.
Lovely. So I've got Councillor Richard Stobart next.
No.
Yeah, Councillor Richard Stobart.
Thank you, Chair. So if I could move on to the community centre and plans for the community centre. You know, I think the received wisdom about community facilities is that they're best defined by the residents, and of course quite a lot of the residents aren't there yet. You know, this is in a sense of trying to hit a moving target. So question I would like to ask is first of all, there is actually quite a good cadre of community workers working in Northstowe. How are the community workers, in a sense, canvassing local residents and in the sense anticipating some of the expectations? So as the demographic change, you go from younger families to older families. As the demographic mix takes shape, and so that, for example, inform the way the spaces are going to be used in the community centre. We'll have different places of worship. You know, the Church of England is saying we're no longer going to build churches, we're going to use community facilities and so on. How is that, to cut to the chase and express my question, how are the community workers helping to define the shape of the community centre and keep its flexibility so that all those kind of future needs will get anticipated?
Councillor Bill Handley.
Thank you for the question. I thank Councillor Stobart for the question. The community workers are absolutely key. Claire Gibbons leads them, but we have Mihaela Stan, and they are, sorry, I can't remember the second, terrible. They speak to the people all the time. They now have an office in the cabin, as we are now calling it. So they're speaking to people on a daily basis. Apart from that, we have spoken to people via the community forum, and there have been surveys and so on. So the facilities that will be included in the permanent community building will be the facilities that the people of the town have requested. I know you talked on, you briefly mentioned faith buildings. There is faith land available on Northstowe. It's not something that this council is responsible for building, but we will be responsible for administering how that land is used. Okay, so it'll be going through a formal bidding process where whichever, well, all faiths we hope, will come along with bids to, and hopefully work together. So we've got a multi-faith building, and that's what we're hoping for.
Councillor Richard Stobart, do you want to come back at all?
Well, thank you for that. The community team, if you will, has a certain shape now. What's the plan for the community team, you know, looking into the coming months and years?
Well, they're going to be there for a while. I don't know what maybe one of the officers can tell me what they're projected, how long they're likely to stay for, but I suspect they'll be there for some years because we're only 1,400 houses out of 10,000. You know, it's a big project. It's going to go on for a lot of years, and the community is going to need a lot of help and support as it grows and develops. I have to say, the community so far in Northstowe is already quite remarkable, actually. You know, if you go to the community building, you know, you see a really thriving community. You know, they've got food hubs which sit outside, coffee hubs, coffee trucks. Of course, we've got a market now. I don't know if it's every month at least. Just a fantastic community feel. There was an opening day a couple of weeks ago, which I attended, just full of people, and they were all really happy. You got the feeling that the community had been there for years, not just, you know, many years, not just fairly recently, you know.
Thanks very much. Did you, Anne, want to come in?
Thank you. Just on that point about community engagement, as Councillor Hanley has said, it's an incredibly active community at Northstowe, which has always been absolutely fantastic to see. And their support and involvement and engagement with us in terms of consultations for the buildings and what kind of activities need to take place there moving forward has been so important in helping us develop the buildings that are already in place, such as a temporary community centre and then the pavilion coming online as well. And we've actually been able, with the temporary community centre, we tweaked and changed the internal layout of the building based on the feedback that we were receiving from those groups. So we're so grateful to them for the expertise and advice and time that they've given us over the last few months to help us shape the buildings accordingly. What I would say in terms of the community development team, they're going to continue to be extremely busy. There's a lot going on. But if you don't mind, Chair, if I could just pass to Claire, just to give a little bit more information about the future of the team. Thank you.
Thank you. So currently we have 2 community development officers. One that is being funded through Section 106 funding from Phase 1 and another from Phase 2. We have secured similar funding from phases 3A and 3B and would be seeking equivalent funding from any other development associated with Northstowe. So indeed, that support for community development will be ongoing throughout the life of Northstowe. And this is one of our key learning points, that community development support is vital to enable communities to cohere, to support one another. And just on that point of support, it's not the only revenue that's available to support communities. The very generous Phase 2 Section 106 settlement provide, and an equivalent for phases 3A and B, provide some additional specialist support funding for youth workers, for mental health support, etc. So we can really encompass all the needs that are exhibited by new communities and build on the learning that we've gained from other sites.
Councillor Bill Handley.
Yeah, thank you. Just following up on what Claire has just said. The question from Councillor Drew earlier, what lessons learned? You know, one of the lessons I think we've learnt is that having community officers in a new development as early as possible is absolutely key. And even before people move in, frankly.
Thanks very much. Okay, so we'll move on to Councillor Paul Bearpark.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask a question about in the implications section of this report. It talks about financial, staffing, risks and opportunities. Under staffing, it says there are no direct implications. Now, maybe not arising from this report, but obviously as a result of South Cambs District Council having to deliver these buildings, I guess there are staffing and resourcing implications. Now, maybe that's been discussed previously at other meetings, but I was just wondering, you know, is there a heavy burden associated with the delivery of this by South Cambs rather than the developer?
Councillor Bill Handley.
Well, I may have to defer to other officers. I mean, I would say that, yes, there's bound to be quite a heavy officer requirement. It's a big project, but it's been budgeted for. As Claire Gibbons has already pointed out, some of the community officers are actually funded out of S106 funding, so that's not a financial burden. But yes, we do have a new build team working, beavering away, delivering these buildings and doing a really good job in doing it as well. Yes, there's bound to be, but I couldn't give you any figures. Yeah.
Thank you. Happy to come in on this point. As you say, because it was a progress report, it was more about the work that's ongoing in terms of the team. What we did is we set up a cross-council team, which we call Team Northstowe, and some of my colleagues are here today. And what we all bring is our expertise and our specialisms. So we cover things like community development, new build, etc. So yes, there is a staffing resource involved in this, and we've already talked earlier about the implications of learning from a Section 106, which passes this kind of responsibility for buildings onto the council, and therefore, by definition, the implications of having to staff and deliver those buildings. What I would say is that the team are absolutely phenomenal in their commitment to Northstowe, and I hope you can see that from the progress that we've made over the last 12 months. The pace at which the council has moved on these projects. I've had people come along to me and say, we've never heard of a council moving that quickly in terms of some of these projects, and that's been wonderful to get that feedback. So yes, there are implications with staffing. We have broadly used that from staffing that existed. We have added some extra resource into the new build team recently, but in terms of the way that Team Northstowe works, we are officers who are also working on other projects alongside this commitment and dedication to Northstowe. What I will mention again, though, is we absolutely could not do it without the support of the local community, town council and other partners who are part of the delivery group. And that has been so important in giving us the assistance as officers to be able to move forward with the projects at pace. And again, just to say we're extremely grateful for that wider support.
Councillor Bill Handley, did you want to come in again there?
I mean, really, what I would like to say is, you know, we're at a bit of a milestone with the opening of this pavilion, which is, as I said earlier, quite an impressive structure. You know, you might, as a committee, wish to have a look at it. I mean, it really is something of which this council can be proud. You have a look at the cabin as well. It's a porter cabin. It's modular, but it serves the purpose very well. You'll be very welcome to come and have a look. I'm sure if you spoke with, I think, probably Claire Gibbons, she'll make arrangements for you to visit. I think it's well worthwhile.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Bill Handley. Did you want to follow up at all?
Yeah, no, that's all very good to hear. Thank you very much. It's good to hear that there's a good team, capable team working on this, doing good work, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Anna Bradnam.
Thank you, Chair. I was fortunate enough to be asked when I was chair of South Cambs District Council to go and celebrate the first meeting of the town council there. And in preparation for delivering some words there, you know, I went back through the history, and at that time, which was a couple of years ago, things at the time were working quite slowly. They had set up a town council, but things were moving slowly because there was this bit of the delivery of the community facilities hanging over us. So actually I want to endorse what Anne Ainsworth has said here, that actually having now got this decision and undertaken as a district council to make up the shortfall and get funding for the shortfall, I'm just so pleased that the core, the heart of Northstowe is now beginning to be, well, and is now being delivered and being used. And every day there are children in there and doing activities and crafts and sports. And, you know, it's really giving the community a core to enjoy and be part of. So I just wanted to thank all the officers who've worked so hard to bring this round, because it was not an easy thing to do, and it's all credit to this district council to actually grasp the nettle and find the funding for it, because it's been absolutely crucial to this community. So I just wanted to celebrate that. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Anna Bradnam. Councillor Bill Handley.
I would like to thank Councillor Bradnam for those comments. I'm sure they'll be very well received and very welcomed by the team. They have worked exceptionally hard.
Yeah, and I'm sure those comments are echoed by the whole committee in terms of lead members and officers' work that they've put into this project. So thank you very much for that, Councillor Bradnam. So if we've got no other speakers on this, we will move to the recommendation, which is set out on page 13, item 5. We have been asked to note this report, essentially. So are we happy to note this report as it goes to Cabinet?
Agreed.
Agreed? That's unanimous then. So we will move on to item 7 on the agenda. Sorry, item 6 on the agenda, cost of living support update. This report is presented to the committee as a draft cabinet report, and the Scrutiny and Overview Committee is requested to comment and provide feedback on the projects that are set out within it. So I will open it up to questions from the committee. Councillor Leeming.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to ask a question about point 9, which is on page 30 of the agenda, which is to do with people being provided with electric blankets, slow cookers, or sometimes both. And it says that they will prioritise using council data to identify those most likely in need. What was that data? What was the criteria that was used to make that assessment?
Councillor Bill Handley.
We decided at an early stage that we would target those people who just about managing. These are people that often miss out on other benefits because they're in work, but they still struggle. And, you know, also, you know, incurring additional costs such as having to travel to work and so on. We decided for the fresh round, this coming winter, to actually target those with reduced mobility because they are more at risk. There's data to show that they are more at risk from cold conditions than others. And of course, you know, they can often put more pressure on the health service. So that's what we decided to do, and data from our own data we used, and we're also going to extend it to some other disabled people. It's basically we looked at those on council tax benefits and those on certain other mobility benefits. I won't give you the full, I think it's actually in the paper, but that's the criteria that we used. Any surplus equipment which is not distributed as a result of the initial trawl will then go to our housing officers. So if they come across anyone who clearly going to benefit from an electric blanket, they're able to help.
Thank you, Councillor Handley. This year, this coming future year, do we know how many people we anticipate giving this sort of support to? This report's reporting on the previous year, the 400 people that were given these useful items. Do we know how many we anticipate to give out this year, please?
Yes, we estimate that there will be just over 500 people in the district that would probably potentially meet the criteria. We have a budget to cover 500, so we should just about cover it, I think.
Okay.
Thank you. I just have a very general comment about the whole report, actually. It's a huge piece of work, and I just wanted to thank everybody that had been involved with the warm hubs, which are now the community hubs, all the volunteers that have been involved in this across the whole district, and our officers, and everybody and our partners, people like Hope Pick, who've worked closely with a number of these projects, and I just wanted to acknowledge the significant work that's been undertaken over the last year.
Thanks very much, Councillor Lehman. Councillor James Hobro.
Thank you, Chair. So this is a question about the same part of the report, but first of all, I just wanted to say that I mean, I feel we all should be tremendously grateful to the team that has rolled these measures out last winter and are putting it together for this winter. I feel very proud to be part of a council that's doing this kind of work. So my question was also about section 9, but really about how these measures are evolving between last year and this year. So I noticed that we already have a programme of giving out electric blankets, which is a kind of evolution of the programme last year that's described in section 9 there. So I wondered if we could have some detail on really what the feedback was like from last year's programme of this, this kind of support, and how we've decided to evolve it as we roll out a slightly different version of it this year.
Thank you, Councillor Hobro. I will comment, but I'll also, if I could point out that we have Chris Richards, the officer who's responsible for this report and responsible for the day-to-day running of this. He's done a fantastic job, I think you'll agree. He may be able to chip in and add information. The main difference is one that I've already covered, and that is that this year we are targeting those with mobility needs. We're taking great care not that we don't go back over old ground, really. We just assume that the people who were benefited from slow cookers and electric blankets last year are not in the pool this year. They don't need it. So we're being very careful about that. And I can reassure people that, you know, we're putting quite a lot of effort in to ensure that they do go to the right people, and there's no sort of fraudulent, you know, eBay activity or anything like that. You know, we are taking those steps to protect the council in that way. I don't know if there's anything more you can say, Chris?
I was just going to say on a difference between last year and this year, with last year deciding to target those just about managing, but this year we've had the opportunity to see more longer term data on the cost of living and who it's affecting most, and some of the data that came out of that we've seen from Citizens Advice Cambridge, so some local data has shown the disproportionate effect that the cost of living crisis is having upon disabled people specifically, and that went to part of the decision to target that cohort this time round.
Do you have a follow-up, Councillor?
No, I think that's a great answer, and I'm really pleased to see that so much attention has been paid to analysing the effects of last year's programme and renewing it so well. Thank you.
Brilliant. Okay. Councillor Fain.
Thank you, Chair. My question sort of follows that from Councillor Leeming earlier on in relation to warm hubs. Forgive me, I wasn't able to find the right reference to it. I thought I'd just quickly find warm hubs, but I find there are 489 references to warm hubs in this report, which perhaps says something about the work that's been done. Only 17 about community hubs, so that was easier. Now, my question relates to learning experience from last year, partly because the weather was fairly clement for a lot of the time. I certainly visited warm hubs on days when there were more volunteers than there were people who didn't see themselves as volunteers, and that's no bad thing. I think the experience was probably quite variable, depending on the choice of buildings, the way they were run. And I wonder how we're learning from that experience to help parishes and others, bearing in mind that the contract is with ACRE rather than with individual parish councils, as I understand it, to run successful community hubs now, to learn the lessons from the warm hubs and make sure that effectively we're getting the best value for the money put into it and not missing out too many people who might otherwise be there. One little point was I noticed, and this may not be universal, that, for instance, dogs were not allowed in most warm hubs, and a number of people said that they wouldn't go there without their dogs. I don't know whether that's a variable issue or one that could be addressed. I have to declare an interest as a dog owner. But little things like that, trying to identify who can best benefit and who may have felt excluded from warm hubs last year and might be more included in the community hubs programme.
Thanks very much for that. I'll go over to Bill Handley.
Yes, thank you, Chair. We thought last year warm hubs was a term that had been used not just here but in other parts of the country. I think we came to the conclusion it was a bit of a misnomer, really, because it's not. It was, sure, it's a place where people could go and keep warm, but it was more than that. It's social. It was, you know, and hence the reason for changing the name, and also by putting more resources into helping people whilst they're there, whilst they're having a chat and a cup of tea. They can also learn about where they can go to get further help if they need it. And of course, you know, problem shared, problem halved, and all of that. So it's very important. On the dog issue, I wasn't aware of that. It may be that the venue is setting the rule rather than, I don't think it'll be us. Yeah, I just wasn't aware of that. I don't know if Chris is aware of it.
I'm not aware about, well, there certainly hasn't been an instruction from South Cambs to stop any dogs going into community hubs, but that is something that I can pick up definitely. But in terms of learning from last time, so as Councillor Handley has mentioned already, the change of the name to community hubs, because a lot of people saw the Warm Hubs name as a barrier because they didn't want to be seen as needing help. So that's something that we've taken forward. And also with the new Community Hubs programme, we're going to be, or Cambridgeshire ACO are going to be employing 3 village agents who will be people that are based in the community, and their part of their job role will be to be promoting the community hub within the community. So, for example, if there is an individual that feels like they can't go to the community hub for whatever reason, the village agent can work with them, work through that. And with when you speak about the weather as well, that's also something that came up, and one of the Cambridgeshire ACO outlined some roles that each community hub volunteer groups can fill, and one of the ones going forward is going to be a transport role to give people lifts into community hubs.
Yes.
The other thing I would just very quickly say, shouldn't underestimate the importance of people, intelligence coming back from the community hubs. You know, in other words, people will say, well, you know, Mrs. Bloggs is struggling. She won't come in here, but she needs help. Information that can go via ACRE, and we can follow up on. So that's another important aspect to this, which we perhaps don't talk about very much.
Agreed. And I think it's really important how we pick bits out that really work and then allow those to emerge into things for socialisation, like we talked about at a previous committee, and how those warm hubs will develop, whether it's a change of name or picking the bits out that really worked. But yeah, Councillor Peter Fain, did you want to come back on that at all? No. Okay. Councillor Khan.
Councillor Fain has covered lots of points actually that I was planning to ask about. But in my ward, Orchard Park had a warm hub, which then was not very successful and closed down. And I just wondered if you can think of, give some indication of the reasons why some of the ones which were less successful didn't succeed, and whether you had planned to reapproach some of these to try out the community hub formula and to see whether that's more successful. I mean, I can think of reasons why Orchard Park might have been less successful in terms of the demographic of living, even though it's got a high level of deprivation, the demographic is rather different from many of the other areas which are considered. But I just wondered if you've got any feedback on that.
Councillor Bill Hanley.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think Orchard Park is a bit of an unusual demographic. I mean, there are elements of deprivation. There are also people there who are probably very well paid too. But yeah, I mean, Chris touched on this. I think there's a stigma attached to the warm hubs. Some people were just too proud to attend. This is why the name change has occurred, and I think that also because we're really making much of the additional information, the social side of it, you know, the hot drink and a cup and a biscuit, all of those things is, you know, reduces the risk of stigma and people feeling they don't want to attend for that reason.
Thanks very much. Councillor Khan? Yeah. Councillor Anna Bradden.
I've just found the name which I was hunting, I'm going to have to go back to the page on which I made my notes. I was looking for the name Rose Regeneration, who were the people who produced the report, because what struck me was that, oh, hang on, that isn't the right page at all. I'll have to do it from memory.
I think it was 104 the numbers were on, was it?
Yeah, it was where I'd put my notes.
Yeah.
But
Oh,
basically
sorry.
what
Okay.
it was that from this early idea of warm hubs, what we saw was that actually the reason they worked was because they grew organically in communities. And I know in Milton, my own community, they had already started to do it when it was suggested that we should do it. And good for Cambridgeshire Acre for coming up with some money for it as well. But what that showed was, yes, the slight uneasiness that people felt, not wanting to admit that they were feeling cold. And in fact, some people in my area said, well, actually, it's not during the day that I need that. If it was really cold, it's in the evening that I need somewhere warm to go. But actually what came out of it was that when people did go, what they enjoyed was just being somewhere with other people, and for a lot of people it was the social interaction that they valued enormously. And what I think Rose Regeneration have done really cleverly, and it's a lot of work to gather and analyse narrative data. So I just wanted to give them the credit for doing this, because it is not easy to gather narrative textual information. But what it's recognised is there's so much involved in this. It's the perception people have of why they might go. It's simply the location of the building. You know, people have said a central location is more likely to work. It depends on the building. You know, some people may not want particularly to go to a building associated with a church, but some others are happy with that, and sometimes that's the only building that's available. And so there's so many things that play in individual communities as to whether this continues or not. And so I'm very glad that we're continuing to support communities to do this and to find out what works for them, because clearly it's actually quite an individual thing as to whether the hub in the village works or not. And if we can be flexible enough to support people in the way that their community needs to be supported, then that's great. And well done to all the officers who supported that. And well done to all the volunteers who gave up their time to make teas and coffees and do the training and learn how to be careful of safeguarding and GDPR when they were doing it. And all the time that volunteers gave up. And I'm pleased that we're continuing to support that. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Bradnam. Did you want to come in on that, Bill?
No, Chair, it's good to hear those words. I agree with them wholeheartedly. I think one of the things that Rose Regeneration sought to do was to actually put a financial figure on the benefits of the scheme, which for some people is going to be very important. It certainly gives us the information to back up our the grounds we have for continuing the scheme.
Thanks very much. Did you want to come back at all, Councillor Brown?
Well, it made me think I ought to dig my own slow cooker out and use it again.
Okay. Yeah, did you want to come in?
Thanks, Chair. It was just a minor point in regard to the funding. Obviously, it was a package of measures that the council agreed for last winter, and obviously you've agreed another package of funding for the extended programme, and also funding from the Integrated Care Board as well. So Acre was a very, very important partner, but the funding was the council and health partners.
Okay, Councillor Richard Stobart.
Thank you, Chair. There's been talk of success and warm hubs
successfully launched and run, and some that have had mixed fortunes. But in Girton, and if you forgive the kind of anecdotal setting of this, in Girton we had discussions frequently. In fact, it became the topic of conversation in our informal forums as well as in the parish council. How were we going to get a warm hub together? And there was quite a lot of talk about the locations, about the volunteers, but always we would spiral in on one very important topic, which is how do we really reach the people who have a need? And one of the parish councillors was particularly keen on this and would quiz us about what was available to, from the district council that would just help us to identify those little pockets of need, for want of a better term. And we did raise it from time to time, but it resulted in us never actually converging on a plan or a proposal for warm hubs, even though there are 3 very good locations in Girton, geographically separated, which would have been a great place. I think partly it was volunteer deficit. There weren't the volunteers stepping forward, and it's not as if, for example, at the Baptist Chapel, Thursday mornings, they would do something that we'd recognise as a warm hub. In other villages, we're aware of lunch clubs and things that do the kind of functions that warm hubs we began to recognise could deliver. So I wonder what it is about the villages that didn't step forward with a good warm hub proposal. Are they going through the same kind of cycle? And I was interested in suggestions or how we might move forward as a district council, just helping those villages where they're having that debate. And then coming back to the question that we kept coming back to, which is how do we really relate to the people in need when they don't want to talk about it? I mean, there was a reference that Councillor Handley made about the stigma that might be attached to turning up at a warm hub and saying, well, I actually can't afford to heat my house. I don't want to project that to the neighbourhood. So I think there are probably things that we haven't touched. And I think the warm hub, the whole thing is brilliantly done. And I think the report is fantastic. And the data that's been accumulated is also highly useful. And I was wondering if there was more we could do with it. But do we always come back to this question of how do we really reach the people in need? And that's such a general question. I'll leave it hanging in the air, but if anybody could comment on that, I'd really appreciate it.
Councillor Bill Handley.
If only we had the head of communications here. No, seriously. We are obviously there are people who are not online for a start who may well need help, and we do have the South Cambs magazine, which is actually very well read. It's not something that just goes straight in recycling on the whole. It's a good publication that people actually read, and we have had some. But I'll just ask Gareth to comment on what we've done. Chris, tell us what we have been doing.
So that is a really difficult challenge in South Cambs, especially as a rural district, to try and reach those people in need. But with the community hubs going forward, I mentioned the village agent role before. These are hopefully going to be, they're still recruiting at the minute, so they're not in post, but they're hopefully going to be people that are based in the communities where these community hubs are. So they'll be able to work with those local communities and try and identify areas where it might be that we think there are people that could benefit from going to a community hub that might not be going. Another thing that will be happening going forward is the putting on events at community hubs. So if there was an event to do specifically with the cost of living or called cost of living, someone that was actually struggling with the cost of living might not want to go there to, as we discussed, the stigma attached for it. But if it's a completely different event on some activity, for example, these people might show up as well, start speaking to people, and that casts the net wider for the number of people that are attending in these villages. And also, sorry, on the point about the volunteer deficit, that's something that we've seen is that the hubs that are most successful are the ones that have this really strong volunteer base behind them. especially certain individuals that can be pushing and recruiting volunteers to keep that going forward as well.
Did you want to come back on that, Councillor Stobart?
Perhaps Councillor Handley would like to,
Yeah.
but I would like to ask make a follow-up comment.
Okay, Councillor Handley.
Just to follow up that, we do still have some capacity. I mean, if people identify, a need and a means of introducing a community hub in their parish, I would just ask them to get in touch with Chris.
Yeah, come back, Councillor.
Yeah, thank you. So there is a connection. We talked about community workers in the strategic sites and new developments and so on. The village agents, I think, represents a really an excellent way forward. People can specialise in making the connections and helping organise those special events where they can facilitate that kind of where are the needs. And to have the conversations and reflect on what's actually said. So I think that the village agent notion is great, and we'd really like to know how that's going on in due course. I know it's funded by Cambridge Acre, but do we have the possibility for a report back, perhaps in the springtime, when we've accumulated some experience?
Councillor Bill Hanley.
Councillor Stobart makes a good point. I'm sure we can do that. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so we'll come on to Councillor Earl.
I was thinking to ask about the community vegetable gardens at point 19, page 33, and how that was envisaged to work, perhaps how it's going to link with the provision of allotments in villages.
Councillor Bill Hanley.
I'm a passionate allotment holder myself, and we are working on it. I'm not sure that I've got anything really concrete to report today, but it is something that we are taking really seriously. I would love to see more allotments, better equipped allotments, because a lot of the allotments I know of don't have, water, for example, which is hopeless. If you haven't got water, you just can't grow plants. I'm passionate about it. We're going to bring it on. We've also got we've mentioned in the report, the vegetable gardens, which we're hoping to promote, and that I think that's slightly different from allotments in what we're trying to do. But I know that Chris is working up arrangements to get those launched next spring, just as the growing period starts, because it's pointless doing it over the winter. But March time, hopefully, we'll have something to report then.
It would be good to see how that links up, because quite often on television, Gardeners World particularly, you see people very happily digging around in the summer on a vegetable garden. Actually, it's not like that. It's, as you know, as an allotment holder, it's all year round. It's jolly hard work, and it needs some expert mentoring. So I'm just keen to see how that might link with the allotment movement, where you have got such expertise that can keep people going on a community vegetable garden.
Councillor Bill Hanley.
I absolutely agree. It is a year-round thing, but the idea of launching it in the spring, I think, is pretty obvious. You may as well do it at the time when people are about to, sow their seeds. Yeah, I think allotment. During the lockdown, it was legal for allotment holders to go on their allotment. You could stand on your allotment and speak to your neighbour. It was absolute, mental well-being was fantastic of allotment holders. I've got a huge amount of time for allotments, but they need to be properly equipped with water, rabbit fencing, and so on. And dare I say, loos, because a lot of people put off allotments. If they're out in the sticks, it's all right for if you jump over the fence, and if you need loos. And I think all of those things we need to consider if we're going to improve allotments or indeed to initiate new ones.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Councillor James Howray.
So thank you, Chair. So had two questions, if that's okay. And the first is very much a follow-up to Councillor Earle's question about the vegetable garden. So I'm very pleased to hear that allotments and vegetable gardens are being considered together, because clearly where there are no allotments, then there's an opportunity for something that's a little bit similar, like a community vegetable garden. But I wondered, and it might be too early to know anything about this, given that the planning hasn't really begun on this in full, but I wondered if there's any idea at this stage of who will manage the vegetable gardens. So, for example, will they be linked in any way with the community hubs, or will they be going through there are plenty of gardening clubs in the villages in the district. Is there any indication at this stage of how they'll be organised and managed?
Councillor Bill Henley.
Chris, who's sitting behind me, is the guy who's going to be organising this. Obviously, at the moment, he's working pretty hard on the cost of living work. But, yeah, I mean, I think this is all about local enthusiasm, really. Communities wanting to do it. If they don't, it won't happen. So, you know, I hope that maybe we as members can actually encourage people to get involved. Parish councils can. And any suggestions anyone has as to how we might make this a success, I'll be very welcomed by Chris and myself.
Thank you. So I suppose the first suggestion that immediately sprang to mind was the gardening clubs. So in my ward there are 2 gardening clubs that are quite vibrant, and I imagine that identifying and contacting those clubs might be a very good way to start.
It would be good if you could let Chris have those details. If he hasn't got them already, he may have them already. But thanks.
May I ask another question?
Of course, yeah.
Thank you. So the other question is about the Sustainable Food Network. So this is item 17 on page 32. So from what's written here, then I can see that this has initially been aimed at sharing food between the food hubs and making sure that there's as little waste as possible in that respect. But there's a tantalising sentence right at the end, or at least the last couple of sentences, which talk about combating food waste to help achieve our climate goals, and also encouraging businesses to donate excess food. Now, I often hear that the kind of figures for food waste nationally and globally quoted as between 1/4 and 1/2 of all the food that between 1/4 and 1/3 of all the food that we produce goes to waste, which sounds like an awful lot. I also hear about businesses which survive entirely on making something out of food which would otherwise go to waste. For example, taking fresh vegetables that would be used in businesses that need to prepare fresh sandwiches or whatever, and then using things that can't be used in that context, but making preserves out of them. That's the kind of thing that allows you to make a business out of something that would otherwise be completely go to waste. So I wondered whether, and this is clearly an area where a lot of our goals intersect. We wish to combat the cost of living crisis through the food banks. We wish to reduce the carbon footprint of what is, I suspect, a very large amount of food waste, given that we're quite a wealthy district and city. And we wish to reduce waste overall. So all of these things might come together. So I wondered what thoughts there are at the moment that relate to that last sentence, which when I read this is sort of left hanging. So I wondered where we're likely to go with that, because I see quite a few potential opportunities there.
Councillor Bill Hanley.
I think, I don't know if Chris has got anything to add on this, but I think certainly making the connections is something that the council could do and do very well. I mean, we do know who are running food banks, for example. I mean, if people have got a surplus of vegetables that they might, I'm sure they will be warmly welcomed by those. It's just a matter of making that connection. So yeah, it's a very good point, and it's one that we will take away.
Yeah, I was going to mention on the last sentence about encouraging businesses to donate. We were, or when this was written, we were looking for a mechanism to do this through. So there are a lot of different apps or websites that businesses can share that they have excess food, and then a local food bank goes and says that they can pick that up, and we were just investigating which one would be best for South Cambs to try and keep it all on the same platform so as to not confuse. Since then, I've met with representatives from Fair Share Go, which is an app that does exactly as I was explaining, and there is a meeting between all the food banks taking place at the end of this month, where if it's something that they would like to partake in, then it's something that we'll be encouraging businesses to sign up to through our links in the business support team. And there's already been some work that's been done on this as well. So we've created a donations toolkit for all of our food banks, and that's been distributed to them, which explains and gives tips on, for example, how to approach a business, a local food business, and ask for their excess food. And there's also been extra support offered if they wish to have council support to approach any businesses as well.
Just say that things move really quickly in the world of South Cambs cost of living support. That's news to me.
Good.
Oh, yeah, if I might just comment briefly, that sounds very exciting. I will watch with interest, and thank you very much for paying attention to this. It's great. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fane, did you want to come back? Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. It's a question that arises out of something Councillor Hanley said earlier on about the importance of coffee and biscuits and so on. Just a thought, in relation to alignment with council priority areas of growing local businesses, there is a potential problem of competition with local businesses. So if I take, for example, the Warm Hub, as it was then, run in the community room at the back of the Free Church in Great Shelford, well, about a year and a half ago, the Free Church, working with Romsey Mills, set up a cafe in a spare building around the corner, about 25 metres from there, called Cara Cafe, run in conjunction with a charity and largely by volunteers. And, you know, coffee and cake there is about £5, but people were going around to the community rooms at the back of the Free Church, and coffee and biscuits was free. And I think we need to just bear in mind the potential impact of these efforts. It could well be that the Warm Hub was being used by people who couldn't afford £5 for but not necessarily. Quite a few people who were going there could perfectly well have gone to the charity cafe around the corner as well. I'm not saying we shouldn't do it in any way or offer free coffee, just that we need to bear in mind the impact on newly established businesses that this could potentially have.
Councillor Bill Hanley.
It's a good point, and it's not one size fits all. As you say, there's going to be some places where it might be critical, and many other places it won't be. But it's a point well made, and I'm sure that Chris has made a note of it.
Lovely. Councillor Anna Bradnam.
Very brief one. Just going back on the point that people may not want to be identified as people who need help. In one of my local churches, I have a very successful food cupboard, which is actually the entire church porch, and it's often very well supplied with all sorts of goodies. But the church warden advised me that often people were visiting after dark because they didn't want to be identified as somebody needing help. So this is just a point to bear in mind, and it's that officers have understood that, I'm sure. But I'm actually being mindful that Councillor Ellington was called away, but just before the meeting she advised me that she wanted to point out, she didn't ask me to raise this on her behalf, but I will do so just in the spirit of sharing. She pointed out that she was a bit concerned about the reference on page 89, I think it's page 89. She was referring to the fact that Cambridgeshire Acre talked for the future about setting up community agents or village agents, and she was concerned that there might be a risk of duplication of existing services I'm not quite sure in what way she meant, but I'm aware in my village we have a community care warden, but also we have community navigators who are trained and kept up to date by the county council. And also, of course, there's advice available from the parish council. So I just wondered if we need to be, and also that there seemed to be an implication that there might be funding made available for these new posts. I may have misunderstood that, but I think the concern was that that might not be money well spent if that role and advice route is already being delivered by existing services.
Yeah, that's how I understood her point. So the other things, you've got sort of social prescribers and things in GP services and so forth to add to that as well. Councillor Bill Hanley.
It's a related point, but it's probably a little off the subject. All I can suggest is that Councillor Ellington writes to me with her concerns, and I will pass them on to the relevant officers. I'm hoping that things will, the joined-up approach will improve. Not seeing it quite yet with the county council in particular, but I'm hoping that it will happen, because it really should. I mean, whether you're talking about day centres or, you know, food hubs, whatever, it's something, you know, we need to make sure that there's no duplication, because that, you know, at the end of the day, we're all chasing the same resources, aren't we?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Gareth?
Thanks, Chair. It was just to briefly add that I think these roles are complementary, not looking to duplicate the other roles. I think we talked about sort of lessons learned from the warm hubs, and Cambridgeshire Acre certainly felt that the additional role of a village agent, I almost called them a community navigator there, was a really important one to make the hubs a real success for this winter. So I can absolutely see that it's a really valid point around not duplicating, but I think I can provide members with reasonable reassurance that this is not a duplication. This is really trying to make sure that the community hubs that are provided this winter really flourish and provide the whole community with the best, you know, the best service possible.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Councillor Richard Stobart.
If you might allow at this stage, Chair, a general question. One of the things that appears in the Cambridgeshire Acre report, which is Appendix B to this section, is social value. And it's not a term we've often used, but it seems to be, in a sense, quite compelling in terms of, well, where have the gains really been made in social terms? Now, I think relating social benefit to pounds, I suppose, reduces it to a currency that we understand, and we would need to be careful about that. But evaluating effort, as which is directed at building social capital in communities, it looks, you know, like an evaluation procedure would be very beneficial. So the question, and perhaps Councillor Handley, through you, would be able to comment on this, is that as we evaluate schemes and expenditure on things, that we could do maybe a tentative social value calculation to illustrate the benefit and compare it with other efforts and other things that we might be doing. So general question about social value.
Thank you, Councillor Stobart. I have to say, I was going to ask a similar question on social value. I think it's quite difficult sometimes to equate that into sort of £4.19. I know the figures are set out later in the document on page 103 or something, I think, but it's quite difficult to work out, I think, how you arrive at that figure, really. I found that quite complicated to understand, really. So just to add to your point, Councillor Bill Hanley.
I'm not sure I can add very much, to be honest. I think like you, it's something that would be nice to have. Whether we can do it or not, well, it's a point well made, and we'll take it away, and I will undertake to come back to you if I think there's any significant sort of progress on that. it's a good point.
Okay. Any other speakers? I've just got one quick question. So, on page 33, where we talk about provision of food parcels, I think I know the answer to this, because when residents have asked me about having food parcels delivered to them, I've always gone through officers, but I just wondered if we could clarify in that paragraph where it talks about the route or the referral process, if you like, via officers or volunteers. Could it be added that councillors can be a referrer, if you like? Because currently the process is, I think, that so when I've done it before, I would approach an officer and they would then put that forward. In the document, it sort of implies that officers or volunteers are sort of almost doing the referrals, and if that's the case, I think councillors should be included in that, essentially. But there might be an administration issue around that officers we still need to go through the officers, essentially. Thanks very much. Councillor Bill Hanley, or
I suspect that the answer is that, you know, members should speak with officers, really, but whatever way we can make it simple, really.
Streamlined as possible. Yeah. Chris?
Yeah, I think it would be possible to have members referring directly as well.
It would. Okay. Yeah. So that could be added in to that paragraph. Lovely. I don't have any other questions. Does anybody else have any other questions that they wanted to ask on this? If not, we will go to the recommendation, which I think is on page 29. And I think we've done what the report recommends, which is to sort of ask questions of this and make recommendations to Cabinet. Is everybody happy that we've done that?
Agreed.
Agreed? Lovely. Okay, so we will move on. So we'll now go on to item 7, which is the work programme. So we've got the work programme set out in the document there, and Councillor Stephen Drew, Ian, and lead members and officers will be meeting to discuss what's coming up on that agenda. Does anybody have anything that they wanted to contribute to the work programme, things they'd like to see on it, or things that they wanted to see coming up? Councillor Anna Bradman.
Thank you, Chair. It was, I know that the work programme doesn't give us the detail of the actual papers we want brought to the committee, but I just wondered, when might we anticipate seeing analysis of the key performance indicators?
Thank you for that. So we've got the November meeting where the Q2 performance indicators would be coming forward. There is quite a lot on that agenda, and we're going to discuss what is on that agenda next Wednesday. But I know members have spoke to me that they're quite keen to see the performance indicators quarterly rather than sort of 6 monthly. I had put forward a suggestion that maybe we see the quarter performance indicators every other, so every 6 months essentially, so you get more of a time scale to see changes over rather than just the sort of 3 months. But I'm happy to bring forward what committee members want in terms of performance indicators. If you'd rather still see those quarterly, we can take that into account when looking at the work programme. Councillor Bratton.
Thank you. It was a question. When might we see them? And I understand you may have discussed that. I was just, it's not clear to me. I mean, we've got as the second bullet in the 16th of November, revenue and capital budget monitoring. But that's not, I mean, yes, that's important, and that's important we got it on there, but it's not obvious to me. It was a question of when are they coming? So if it's an additional item for November, then that's fine.
Yes, in answer to your question, but we'll discuss it, because obviously if that comes on, we'll have to shift something off so as not to make the agenda too long, but we'll have a look at that with senior officers, and we will have a discussion going forward as to whether we, as I say, continue to see them every quarter or every other quarter.
Chair, that's I'm very happy that you decide that. I'm just conscious that the longer you leave it, the more out of date they are. So it's just important.
So I think after that, they would come to the November one at that point, So, Councillor Lehman.
Thank you, Chair. I see the KPIs as a critical part of our overview and scrutiny function, and I'm keen to see them quarterly, and I would reject the suggestion to move to them being twice a year.
Thank you very much. Councillor Stobart.
Chair, this time, maybe it was this time last year, but some time ago, and we started off, in a sense, the new term of this committee, talking about items that members would bring that weren't going to come externally and we would have to manage. We would bring them. We had several, and then the momentum seemed to go out of the initiative. Chair, I would like to encourage members of this committee to kind of get back to thinking of things that we should be scrutinising, and they can be off the wall. I mean, we get advice on this kind of thing, but that we should be doing that again. And if you members have lists, please go back to them and let's have some fresh ideas come through.
Agreed, Councillor Stobart, and I think me more than most are guilty for not bringing things forward, but if we can bring things forward, that's brilliant. Councillor Aidan van der Leyen.
Yeah, thank you very much. Looking at the forward plan reminded me that one of the most important functions that this council does is in the realm of housing in multiple ways of intervening, and we've got our own housing and supporting housing in other ways. And there were a couple of things on the forward plan. I mean, the housing strategy coming forward next year, and then some purchases of council homes. I think they're probably separate things, but I don't think we've, since we've sort of increased the number of council houses that we've been buying or building, I don't think we had a sort of overview of that, of the programme, because it's now getting quite substantial. So sort of how it's going might be an interesting thing for, later on, obviously, maybe spring, summer, and could be combined with some discussion of the housing strategy, not wanting to cut across what there's obviously the cabinet will be doing, but and also we've got the homelessness strategy separately, but maybe reflecting again on how the last housing strategy, how it's been implemented, how successful it's been, that then would support potentially the work on the new housing strategy. A couple of ideas. Unfortunately, Peter left 5 minutes ago. So. Okay. But it's something we can pick up now. It's not urgent. I just sort of mention it as a future thing.
Yeah, thanks very much for that. That's right. Councillor James Hobo.
So, thank you, Chair. Just so one comment about the examination of key performance indicators. My feeling on this is that it is valuable to examine them quarterly, and that perhaps we would spend the same amount of time on them if we examine them either quarterly or half yearly, but that if we continue to do it quarterly, then some of that time might allow earlier intervention than it otherwise would. So those are my immediate thoughts on that. And I suppose also if we're looking at these quarterly, then it does spread the load out of the examination between meetings more. Also, I'd like to second Councillor Stobart's comments about the external, our possibility for bringing in people from the outside to the Scrutiny Committee. I'd love to see a few more examples if we can fit those in. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Howbray. Lovely. Anyone else? No? Lovely. Okay, so I think we've noted what's on the work programme there. So we will move on to the date of the next meeting, which is the 16th of November at 5:30 p.m. And that brings the meeting to a close. Thanks very much.